My name is Stewart and I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about Filmora 9 in 20 minutes. Over the last 10 years, my wife and I have edited music videos, wedding videos, corporate videos, YouTube videos, you name it, on Final Cut Pro 10. But it's expensive, it's 5 or 6 times the price of Filmora 9. It's full-on professional editing software. Not everyone's in the market for that level of functionality or at that expense. So when the lovely people at Filmora 9 asked us if we wanted to bring their software to your attention, we thought, why the heck not? And digging into it, it is seriously impressive software. Yes, it's aimed at beginners, but there's some serious mileage in there and some serious functionality. We're going to talk about it all. We're going to talk about editing, we're going to talk about titles, transitions, split screens, effects, you name it in this video. It's going to be intense. You might want to pause, you might want to take notes, you might want to rewatch sections, but in 20 minutes we're going to teach you everything you need to know about Filmora 9. In the description below you will find a link not only to Filmora 9 where you can download a 30-day free trial or purchase the software if you like, but you will also find a link to our free editing software purchasing guide where we compare Filmora 9 with a bunch of other software like Final Cut Pro 10 so you can compare the features, understand better what it is that matters to you to better inform your own purchasing decisions. So do grab yourself a copy of that, link in the description below. Here we are inside Filmora 9. First things first, we need some media to work with, so let's import some. Click on that big icon in the middle of the media window, select our media assets, click open, and there we go. Lovely, here we have our media organized by video, images, and audio. Click on this little icon, you can sort your files by name, duration, type, date created, so on and so on. You can also click on the filter icon to separate the media by videos, images and audio and so on, but for now we'll just leave it with all displayed. Before we start dragging clips down onto the timeline, let's get our bearings first. Here we are inside the media browser. Up here we can also switch into our audio browser, our titles browser, transitions browser, effects browser, Elements browser, which is a bunch of cool badges and animations that we can employ, and also our split screen browser, which we'll get into later. At the upper right hand side of the Filmora 9 interface we have the preview window. If you double click on any of the assets in the media browser, it will preview in the preview window. So in this case a nice piece of B-roll that we will incorporate later into our edit. Use the mouse to click on this button to start and stop playback. You can also move playback backwards and forwards 1 frame at a time for precision editing. Over at the right hand side we have a timer, so if we click on those buttons again you will see the timer move forwards and backwards by 1 frame at a time. It can be a lot faster to do this with the keyboard, so press spacebar to stop and start playback, and if you want to move the playback forwards and backwards 1 frame at a time, use the left and right arrows. Now all of these keyboard shortcuts work not only up in the preview window but down in the timeline also. So get familiar with them because you are going to be using them a lot. Before we start dragging clips down onto our timeline and building out our edit, I want to show you a slightly more refined approach you may wish to take. Double click on the first vlogging clip and it opens up in the preview pane. There I am scratching my ear. This is the start of a YouTube video I filmed recently. Now as you can see I'm walking with the camera and talking, but obviously we don't want that bit at the beginning. So let's play that and skim forwards and see if we can identify the start that we want. We're going to use the spacebar to stop and start playback. We'll use the arrow keys to go frame by frame. And I'd say that looks about right there. Press I to mark the in point. Now look at that little bracket that's put on the timeline there. Now let's play forwards and see if we can find our out point. We'll speed this up for the sake of demonstration. You can see that I'm trying to put my sunglasses on, trying to be all cool. Epic fail, didn't manage, so we want to get rid of that. So we'll skim back a little bit. Again, just using our playback controls, dragging the cursor there on the timeline, using our left and right arrows. Let's see what we can find. Okay, let's go back a little bit. And we will stop the playback around about there. Press O for out point, and there we have a little close bracket marker. Now when we drag this vlogging clip down onto the timeline, we drag the select that we identified up there in the preview pane. In this case, because we didn't set the parameters of our timeline, it has defaulted to a 1080p timeline at 30 frames per second, so it asks us if we want to match the timeline to the media that we are dragging down onto it. In this case, 4K at 25 frames per second, so we click on that button. Let's play the clip to see if it starts and stops correctly. We play, yep, it starts exactly when we wanted it to, our in point, skim all the way forwards, and cool, yeah, it stops before I fail at putting the sunglasses on my face. Now you can see in the media browser a handy little tick showing that the clip has been used in the project. So that's a glimpse of a slightly more professional way of editing. Those of you familiar with Final Cut Pro might have seen this before, but we can of course do it the old-fashioned way of just dragging clips down into the timeline. Right, let's see what we've got in clip number 2. Walking along, fixing my sunglasses. Right, we don't need any of that, do we? Start talking about now. Okay, so we need to get rid of the beginning of this clip. Now, there are numerous ways of doing this. Let's use the left arrow to go back and identify exactly where I start talking, going back frame by frame to see where my mouth starts moving. The first way is just to click on the little scissors icon there in the middle of the clip. Do so, you'll see it splits the clip, select the bit we want to get rid of, and hit backspace. It is gone. Let's undo that, and we'll try again with a second method. With the playhead where we want the clip to start, simply drag the clip in from the side to meet the playhead. That portion of the clip is now gone. Super easy, but if we undo that, we can also just click on the little scissors icon there and it makes a cut. In this case, let's simply press the scissor icon in the middle of the clip, select the bit we want to get rid of, and press backspace. Now, rather than drag the playhead back to the beginning of the clip to see if we made a good cut, use the up or down arrow keys to locate the playhead at the beginning or end of any given clip. Now, when we press spacebar to preview that clip, we can see that we have actually made the cut in the right place. Excellent, job done. Now we've got our 3 clips down on the primary storyline of the timeline. Something you'll want to do all the time is zoom in and zoom out. We have a little slider here for doing just that. You can zoom in and zoom out. You can also press Command plus and Command minus on the keyboard. That is my own preferred way of doing this. Dragging left and right on the timeline there at the top also performs the same function. Rearranging clips is super easy. You simply grab and hold and then pull them around to your heart's content. There we have one up on a secondary storyline, B-roll if you like. We'll see more of that in a minute. It's very intuitive, play around with it, and this is where you can get creative and start to build out your edits. Let's add some B-roll clips on top of our primary storyline. Double click on B-roll clip 1 and as you know it opens in the preview pane. Now it's just me holding a drone from what you can see, but in a second it will pull off the screen. Working backwards, let's find the out point of this clip. In addition to pressing O, you can hit that little bracket key. We'll work backwards and find the in point of the clip. Again, you can press the I key or that little bracket. We want to put this clip at the start of our film, so let's drag it down onto the timeline, and there you can see it creates a secondary storyline on top of the primary storyline. Zoom in a little bit. We don't want any of that background audio that was captured at the time of recording, so grab on that line and pull it down as far as it will go. With the clip selected, you can see we have some more options here. Go to the little icon that looks like a speedometer, adjust speed. Click on that and we have a bunch of options. We can set a custom speed, we can slow the clip down, we can speed it up, we can return it to normal speed, we can insert a freeze frame, but in this instance let's click reverse. Nice, look at that little 1x backward arrow there. Now the drone comes into the frame, it's revealed from the side of the frame, hitting the mark perfectly because we started that shot with the end in mind. Something we do all the time is the so-called picture-in-picture effect. We've done it throughout this entire video and it features in pretty much every single one of our YouTube videos. Very easy to do here on Filmora 9. We've set the in points and the out points of our editing purchasing guide screen capture. So when we drag that down, we now have our edited piece on the timeline. But that doesn't look right, it's far too big. We want it to feature in the top left or top right corner of our footage. Let's get rid of the background audio by pulling down on the audio line as before. Now you'll see this all the time in Filmora 9. Double click on anything in the timeline to access more options. Here we have video, audio, motion and colour. We'll stick with the video parameters here and we can pull backwards on this scale slider to reduce the size of that clip. On the clip itself, you can pull on these handles to resize on the X and Y axis, but we don't want to do that here. You can also pull on this little circular handle to rotate the image. Again, we won't bother doing that here. Click and hold on the image to drag it around and reposition it within the frame. Let's see how this comes up. Move the playhead to the start, press spacebar, up it pops. Yeah, that looks okay. I didn't particularly like the way the clip just appeared, so let's see if we can do something about that. Double click on the clip to bring up all the options, and look, there's a motion tab, a whole bunch of preset motion options that we can apply to that clip. Double click fade with the clip selected, and look there, you can see it fades in and fades out. Looks quite good, but let's try another one. What about boom? Double click on that, spacebar to play. Boom, and it comes. Yeah, it looks quite good. Now, I think we'll leave it at that, but you can play around with these to your heart's content. Here we have an iPhone screen recording that we want to incorporate, so we'll set our in points and our out points, drag it down onto our B-roll storyline and mute it as before. Double click on the clip, go to the video tab, and in this instance we want to rotate it. Let's try 90 degrees. Nope, the clip is upside down, so let's try 270 degrees. That's more like it. Now we want this to fill the frame, so let's use the scale as before to zoom all the way in until we get to the point at which it has indeed filled the frame. That looks about right, but we want to shift it to the left now by using the position parameters, and there we go, job done. Here we are inside the transitions browser, and Filmora very generously gives us loads of these to play with, many of them very, very good. Double click on each one to watch a preview inside the preview window. Let's open the video with a fade from black. So we'll drag the transition down onto the start clip, and you can see there a visual depiction of the transition that we've just added. Let's play that to see what we've got, and you can see now that it fades in from black. Excellent. Now I think that was a little bit too slow, so Command plus to zoom in, and you can see there in more detail that visual depiction of the transition. Grab on the right hand side of it and shorten it just like you would any clip. Bring the playhead back to the start and let's try again. Yep, a nice quick fade in from black. Being Filmora 9, you can double click on that transition to view all available parameters up in the transition browser. In this instance, we can set the exact number of frames for that transition. Now we don't need to do that just now, so let's just click OK. Here we have a hard cut between two vlogging clips, and it looks absolutely fine. It looks consistent and it looks good. But for the sake of example, let's find a jazzy transition to try out. Scrolling down, let's try Warp Zoom 6. Double click on that for a preview. Looks kind of cool, so I think we'll drag that down between the two clips, and there you can see the visual depiction of that transition on the timeline. Let's press play. Yeah, I think it looks pretty nice. It's got a pretty cool kind of travel vlog type style to it, so leave it. Yeah, I like it. The cool thing with these transitions is they can be used to introduce your B-roll. So if we look at this iPhone screen capture that we incorporated earlier, it comes in with a hard cut. Boom, there it is, hard cut. Now we can soften that transition. So let's have a scroll through and see what we can find. What about swirl? Let's just drag that down and see what we get. Press spacebar to play. No, I do not like that at all. That's naff, doesn't work at all. So select the transition, backspace to get rid of that. Let's have another shot. Little browse through the transition browser. Let's have a go at wind. We'll drag that one down, give that a go, spacebar to play. Okay, let's leave that one on for the time being. Playing this from the start, we fade in from black, but I think it'd be nice to have a title that introduces my name. So let's go up into the titles browser, and much like the transitions, you can see we have a whole bunch of titles here. Many of them very, very good, very classy. I think it's a real strength of Filmora 9 for giving us so many usable titles that are infinitely customizable. Filmora 9 keeps quite a lot of this stuff online, so if we look at this lower third 10, you'll see that little icon there, downwards arrow. Click on that to download it into your system and double click on it for a preview. Yeah, I think that one looks quite nice. It's quite a nice example, so let's work with that. Drag that down onto the timeline as you would any clip into the position where you want it to be. This being Filmora 9, just like the clips themselves or the transitions, double click on the title to open up a whole bunch of extra parameters up there in the title browser. Now let's type in Stewart Carroll into the text box, take a look at what we've got, click on the next piece of text, and we'll type in drone film guide this time. Again, you can play around with all the customizations here, but for now, let's just change the color to black. We'll select the second piece of text, do the same there, change it to black, and we are good to go. Hit play and see what we've got. In fades the animated title, Stewart Carroll Drone Film Guide. Looks alright. We'll double click on that title again. You can see more of the options. Transform compositing. There's an advanced option where in this instance you can adjust the timings of the fade ins and so on. And indeed, if you hit on something that you really like, go across and save as custom. This will give you a title preset that you can use again and again, and let me tell you, this is something we searched for in Final Cut 10. It doesn't have it, and it would save me so much time if it did, so thumbs up Filmora 9 for giving us that function. On reflection, I wasn't too struck on that title, but rather than go ahead and just delete it and start again, let's drag a second one down on top, same place as the first title, but this time we will mute the first title. See that little I button there? Let's just click on that, and it hides the track. This allows us to work away on the second option without necessarily deleting the first one, so we can always revert back to the first one if we don't like the second one. So we'll go ahead, change all the parameters of the second title, change the text, drag it around, so on and so forth. In it comes. Yeah, I think it does actually look better in this instance. So this time round, let's go back to the muted track and we will just go ahead and delete it and drag the replacement title down in its place. Up in the media browser, let's find our music. Drag it down onto the timeline below the video tracks, and there you can see a little musical note depicting that we are on a music track. Play that, and if we decide that the music is too loud or too quiet, we can adjust the volume by dragging on the volume line. There you have it. We'll just pull that down a bit in this case to minus 25 decibels for the sake of this demonstration. We also have little handles here that allow us to fade in the audio track. You can do this on a full music track like you see here, or on the audio track attached to a video clip. This being Filmora 9, you guessed it, double click on that music track to access more options. Fade in, fade out, we can change the pitch. We have an equalizer in here so we can play around with the various frequencies that make up the audio track. A particularly useful function is remove background noise. If we have wind noise, air conditioning noise, road noise, all that kind of stuff, try the denoiser, it can be very effective. Remember this little B-roll clip from before of the drone coming in? Whoosh, there it goes. Well, I think it'd be nice to have a little whoosh sound effect. So let's drag our sound effect down underneath the music, play around, find the right place for it. A little bit too early there maybe. In we go. Whoosh, yeah, I think so. Let's listen to it. Filmora 9 comes with a whole bunch of pre-installed music tracks and sound effects, but if you find yourself growing out of that library, then do check out Epidemic Sound. That's where we get our music and sound effects from. Probably the best source for YouTube creators, at least. All the tracks are pre-approved for use on social media. There's a link in the description below. 30-day free trial and 1 month free subscription if you go ahead and get involved on the paid service. Just like videos, you can add photos to your edits, so let's drag a photo down onto our timeline, and as you can see, it's a bit too small for the aspect ratio of our video, so you guessed it, double click on it, access more parameters, and drag that scale slider up so it fits the frame. I want to show you a really cool trick that works well for photos and videos for that matter, so select the photo and click on the little crop icon that you can see here. In this window, select pan and zoom, and we have a couple of options. Look at that, we have a start frame and an end frame, and it's just as the name suggests. It's the starting and ending size of that image. Now in this instance we want to zoom in, so we want the end frame to be smaller than the start frame. So we adjust accordingly, click on the play button for a preview, and look at that, the image is just creeping in. It's a so-called Ken Burns effect, and it's really useful for adding a little bit of motion if we're incorporating photos into our edits. I'm a big fan of the split screen presets here in Filmora 9, so let's click on the split screen browser and we see a whole bunch of options. Let's try this one, split screen 7, drag it down onto the timeline, same functionality as bringing down video clips, photos, music, etc. And you can see we have a whole bunch of options up here in the split screen browser. Feel free to investigate those as you wish, but for now let's click on the media tab and drag some photos across into those predefined frames. Let's use these jazzy car photos that I took a while back. We want to resize some of these. You can see they're not quite fitting, so just click on each one and drag the slider to resize. So that's the white Porsche in position. Let's zoom out on the red Porsche. What a car. Jealous. Well, look at the Lamborghini. Click on that one and we'll just zoom out a little bit on that as well. A feast for the eyeballs. Let's try it out. Look at that. In it comes. I love these split screen presets. In the Elements browser window, we have some really nice animations that we can add to our films. Do browse through all of these, but for now, let's go with this emoji. Click on the little download arrow, you can see it coming in, and we'll drag it down onto the timeline. Same functionality as before, and you guessed it, double click on it and we get access to a whole bunch of parameters. Let's resize it, make it a little bit smaller, drag it up into the top left corner of the frame. Let's trim it a little bit by moving the playhead to where we want the cut mark to be. Hit those scissors, delete the bit that we no longer want. Okay, let's move the playhead to the start and press play. In it comes, in it pops up. Now actually that was a bit short, so I think I'll extend that. I didn't like the way it just disappeared right there at the end, so let's drag a transition down and dissolve out of it. Up in the effects browser, this is where we can get really creative. There's a ton of presets in here, many of them very, very good. It's another real strength of Filmora. Double click on each one for a preview, and there we can see we've got a very strong look. If in doubt, err on the side of caution. You don't want to ruin all your hard work with a silly preset, but nonetheless, go ahead and have some fun. Here's a nice bad TV example that you can play with. As for modifying the colors of your clip, one option is to double click on that clip and identify the color tab. You'll see we have some color enhancement options, some white balance options. We can make tone adjustments. So for the purposes of demonstration, let's pull on that contrast slider and you can see the picture of me changing quite dramatically. We can mess about with the saturation as well. Okay, that's a little bit too much, I think you'd agree. A real feature that I enjoy on Filmora 9 is the built-in LUTs, lookup tables. They're preset looks that modify the colors of an image, and they're set here according to various TV shows and movies. I really, really like them, and you can also import third-party LUTs, which is a function previously reserved for more advanced software like Final Cut, I have to say. In terms of more advanced color adjustments, select the clip and click on that little color palette. Here we have pretty much everything we could need for color correction and color grading. It's a bit intimidating if you're new to this, but if you're more advanced, then it's good to know that you have this functionality. Here we can pull out the shadows if we decide that the image is a little bit underexposed, but we don't want to blow out those highlights. We just adjust those shadows specifically. We could move that black point down as well. You can see the way the histogram moves there as well, so you can really do everything you need to. The HSL tab is something that was only just added to Final Cut Pro 10. Here you can target colors individually. Look at the grass and the greens in the trees there. We can take them up into the greens, we can bring them down into the oranges. You can really play around and create your own looks. It's seriously impressive stuff for an entry-level piece of video editing software, so a big thumbs up to Filmora 9 for incorporating that. Now that we're done, let's export our masterpiece. Click the export button and you can change all the parameters from the file name to the destination folder. You can select that as you wish. You can change the resolution, although in this case we would just leave it as 4K. You can also change the file format. MOV and MP4 will get you where you want to be most of the time, although we also have support for the newer H.265 HEVC codec if you wish. A whole bunch of presets depending on whether you're exporting to an iPhone, iPad, so on and so forth. Hit that export button, watch your creation be exported and created, and then just sit back and enjoy. Did I get it all done in 20 minutes? I do apologise if I went a minute or two over, but as you can see there's an awful lot to talk about, and for an entry-level piece of software that's relatively inexpensive, there really is some serious depth in there. Coming from Final Cut Pro 10, I've been seriously impressed with the elements, the effects, the split screen presets, the titles, the transitions. A lot of the things in there, you need separate third-party plugins for Final Cut 10, normally paid for, to get those kind of options within that professional software that already costs $300. If you do need a bit of help working this out, get yourself a copy of our editing software purchasing guide. You can look at the various functionalities and see which software has which and see which piece of software is for you. You can also download a free trial of Filmora 9. I definitely recommend you do that. Link in the description below for that. Okay, if you've enjoyed this content, please do subscribe. Some of you will be new around here. There's a lot of stuff on this channel, not just editing content, as you've probably guessed from the name of the channel. So we'd love to have you with us on an ongoing basis, and we will see you next time.